Bruce, welcome. Good morning.
Good
And
morning,
Peter,
Bruce. How are you?
good morning to both of you.
Morning.
And so I think we're excited, looking forward to your sessions because there are three that you're going to be doing now. One is the chat between both of you on the resilience and recovery and how Canada regains leadership of the forces shaping the business and community. Then you are doing the collaboration after that, and then the panel. So I can come in just to change the slide, but otherwise, so folks, we are fortunate actually in that we have leaders who actually have done it, been there. So both have fabulous backgrounds. So start with Bruce, as you probably seen him on Dragon's Den and many other things. He's been involved in different companies, and I'm going to let him tell you more about it, although we have put it up on the screen as well. And excuse me, and Peter has actually created, he's a founder. The good thing about both these gentlemen is they didn't inherit anything, they created, which is quite amazing. So Peter is the founder and chairman at Cognitive, and Bruce, of course, Capital 13. And the good thing about what is all about is they're very passionate about the subject they're going to talk about. So I'm going to get out of the way. I will add the entire background to the video because we're recording it so that you will have that. But trust me, I'm sure that you've looked it up because we've put it on the screen too. So I won't take up that. So I'll hide myself and let you take it away. When you need me, I'll be here listening. So
It's good to have the support in the background, Bashir.
For sure. Hey, Mr. Croxon, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Peter?
Good. Surviving the Canadian winter and all things, but it's good to see you. It's been a couple of months since we had a chance to catch up, and a lot's happened since. But you're looking great, and
feel good. I'm actually, as a business guy, I mean, it's rare to celebrate the Democrats getting into power, but I'm feeling relaxed this morning. I don't know what it is. I'm feeling less tense. How about you?
Yeah, same. I think it's nice to hear some positive messages. Got to watch the policies and all of that, as I think you just
all that.
All that. But yeah, it feels a little different today. Nothing like a good speech and everybody rallying around a positive message, which at times like this sometimes is needed more than we all think. But yeah, no, some inspiration and hopefully some good times ahead.
Yeah, it's as I know we're going to talk a little bit about how I think touch on today how all things U.S. touch and affect us for sure. But Peter, like I got to say, thanks for having me included in this event. For those of you that don't know, Peter and I have spent a fair amount of our spare time, I guess, right? I'd have to say, working on trying to, add our small voices to whatever momentum is existing out there to make sure that Canada continues to leverage what I think is a leadership position in many areas, and make sure that, we support one of your favorite topics, Peter, which is collaboration. And increasingly, it's becoming clear the only way to get things done and move things forward is if we've got business and, in this case, government. I think apropos for yesterday, pulling in the same direction and caring about the same things and trying to get things done, because it can be an awful standstill if we're opposed, obviously.
No question about it. And echoing those thoughts, spare time, probably well said. And as much time as is needed, just watching how you respond whenever something happens, whether it's on TV or through your efforts with Round 13, and certainly being a good entrepreneur with a well-rounded background from growing up modestly to having created something spectacular, I guess almost 20 years ago or something like that. It's we've shared a lot of conversations, and it sounds like collaboration is a word that, the more you use it, the more it feels like what all of us try to do as best we can when we see things are are difficult. And as entrepreneurs, when we see opportunities, the same, where whether it's an investor with the entrepreneur or it's, looking for what, the country is supporting that, you're aligned with. But, a lot of stuff going on, bumpy start to 2021 in many ways. What happened in the US Capitol, certainly rising COVID numbers, vaccine distribution, shutdowns across Canada. Some very, very, very difficult situations out there. I'm sure they've touched you, they've touched me and my family and friends, but I got to say it, knowing you, Bruce, what are you optimistic about?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's two ways to look at everything, right? First of all, I've spent my career in technology and I'm still firmly immersed in technology today. And as much as some sectors of the economy have struggled, I would say that we've probably compressed 6 years of technology progress into 6 months because we've had to. People have had to become accustomed to working remotely. People have had to become accustomed to tapping into the e-commerce opportunities. The cloud networks have had to raise their game, because of the stress and strain that they've been under. And I'll tell you what, Peter, it seems like a decade ago now, but when, the COVID first hit, we're all like deer in the headlights for those first, I got to say, even the most cohesive, collaborative of us, it was still 3 months, of dog paddling, trying to get our head above water. And what does this mean? Type of questions. What does this mean for our investments? What does this mean for our families? What does this mean for our, our entrepreneurs? And I'll tell you, I just got to start this off by saying, and you mentioned optimism. I mean, that could have been a body blow, right? And we don't know how long it's going to take to recover. We don't know the ramifications of the decisions we're making today and the government's making today. I think the mental health fallout will continue to roll in for years after this period. So a lot of it we haven't measured yet. But one thing I will tell you is I look across our portfolio of 22 companies and the entrepreneurs that I've had a chance to work with day in and day out. I mean, they're entrepreneurs for a reason, right? Because there was a little bit of, shit, this has happened. What are we going to do? Right. And then it was like, well, time to get to work, right? And time to take action and make some tough decisions. And I saw it, right? I saw the resiliency come to the front. And I frankly also saw an unbelievable amount of empathy and compassion for people that were affected by it. So it wasn't, I'm going to take this, leverage it and win and leave you behind and not worry about it. I saw an amazing collaboration. So that's a very long-winded way of answering your, very simple question. I'm optimistic about the resiliency of the Canadian entrepreneur. I'm optimistic about Canada as a country and how we've conducted ourselves in the midst of chaos south of the border. And I'm optimistic that all the things pre-pandemic that we're making and have made Canada one of the best places on the face of the planet to grow a business. I'm very confident that we're going to have those same attributes coming out the other side of whatever this is and whatever it looks like. We'll adapt. And part of it is because, we don't carry the arrogance of having all the answers, which goes right back to your word about collaboration. If you've got all the answers, what's the point in collaborating, right? Why am I talking with you if I know everything? Right. So just not the case. So we've got plenty to be optimistic about is my short answer.
You had me kind of glued there at the start, a bit stunned actually, because as you were going through what happened, it just brought back every memory. And in fact, the same observation about how we reacted and dealt with it. And interesting on the word collaboration, sometimes we just run right over it, but when you're called to attention, when you have to respond, and certainly one of the characteristics of entrepreneurs and great investors, as you are both, being able to react to changing conditions, sometimes overnight. This was the mother of all changes in many ways, and for me, stunned is probably the best word to describe. I know how I felt, how my family felt, and then of course, from there, it was what can we do about this to react, and that resilience and certainly the people helping people thing that came out right away before we really knew what we were dealing with was inspirational. So I certainly join you in your confidence that, you know, when faced with a big challenge, we'll see people working together in this country. And certainly
the human spirit's a pretty tough thing to quell, particularly the Canadian human spirit, you know, the Alberta human spirit, pretty tough to quell, right?
Well,
I'm not in Alberta, but those guys, you know, take all of our issues, right? And then throw the added challenge of what those guys are going through. I mean, I've seen them come back from a lot, and if anyone's on the conference from Alberta today, hang in there, because you've done it before, right? And the same message I'll give you, you'll be back, and we got your back. Doesn't appear so at sometimes, but I tell you, we do.
Yeah, and look what they were dealing with before we hit this, and pile on, and then again yesterday's announcement about about pipeline activity. But I join you in your words of support and also your words of encouragement for Western Canada. And you know, the fabric of this country has always been to act as one country, and from time to time, it doesn't look like that's what's happening. But deep down inside, I think, you know, whoever I've spoken to feels like you do about how we got to pull together here. And when one's down, somebody else who's up needs to lend a hand. Wow. And, you know, that's it.
And at the risk of getting off topic, I mean, the Quebec license plate says, you know, I remember, je me souviens. Well, everyone should remember the number of years that the transfers out of Alberta, you know, kept a lot of other people alive. That's all I'll say on the topic for now. But I mean, it's, you know, collaboration has to include everybody, right?
That's what I love about you, Bruce. Always going out there and taking the edge of the issue and hitting it straight on, and an attribute, but also a needed attribute today with the number of things coming at us and how we consume things, how we consume media, for example, as it hits us. We'll talk about that later on in more detail on the panel. But I thought it might be interesting just to throw a couple of quick ones back and forth. Pick a word, any word. I'm ready to go. I'll do the same with you. And a rating of 1 to 10, and why you give it that rating, and then I'll try to reciprocate. But on that note about how we consume media, data privacy being everywhere, something that has changed dramatically, and from one person to another, difficult to really understand what's behind the machine, if you will. But on data privacy, Facebook, WhatsApp, 1 to 10, 1 being not an issue, go about your life, 10 being we have to pay real attention. What do you give Facebook, WhatsApp around data privacy?
Yeah, I'm gonna, as far with a Canadian lens, mind you, okay, I'm gonna hit this ball right down the middle and call it a 5. I think you know, when it comes to social media and the language of social media and the so-called news and influence from social media, I'd rank that a much bigger issue than whether or not the you know, Instagram has figured out if I buy Nikes or Converse, you know what I mean? So sure. I've always been pretty transparent. So, you know, maybe it comes from, well, hopefully not having too much to hide, you know, but I mean, have at my data, you know, and if it makes it better for me as a consumer here, have it all, you know? So I understand there's some danger and some downside to that. So I don't mean to be cavalier, but that's why that's why I hit it down as a 5.
That's great. Well, listen, coming from you too, a pioneer of social networking in your days of lava life, and as an entrepreneur, obviously being faced with all sorts of decisions like that ended up working well for the people. And if we can get there, I'd be right with you. My concerns, obviously, and why I'd probably give it, you know, more of a 7 or 8, is that what is behind the machine, well, it can have the benefit that you described Instagram could provide. Carte blanche on our data for what generates traffic is really what we need to pay attention to. How can they make sure that things rank a little bit more according to what matters to us and a little bit less about what matters to them, or the number of impressions or clicks they get, regardless of the cost. But for sure, something to pay attention to.
How do you think we're doing on immigration?
Wow, that one is, I think it's, listen, I'm hopeful. Because this country of Canada was built on, a huge asset of multiple cultures that are supported, across the country, 2 languages, whether you speak them both or not. We grew up in what was the equivalent of the United Nations. So I think as a country, we got a huge run at it. I'm going to give that probably a 9, because it has just proven over the years to be such a major asset of ours. And my concern, and why I think it's something we need to pay attention to, is really the complacency that might have set in with the previous administration south of the border, when we got to work hard for every single person who comes here. Well, it looks like they need us. My view is, and my experience has been much the opposite. I feel like I'm getting interviewed, not giving them when I'm trying to bring somebody to this country. They already have a reason to want to come. And my job is to not mess that up. I think it's huge. It's huge for the importance of our country. It's huge for the global agenda that we're faced with today. And we have assets we can leverage with the empathy toward cultures and languages.
Yeah, 100% agree. I put it right up there too. And I got to say, I'm the first to step on my box when I think we're going offside in the private sector government partnership, but we hopped on it when Trump started making it less attractive, and we made it more so. And I think that gave us a little bit of a 4-year boost. Back to my optimism, we attracted a lot of smart people during that time, and I agree with you. We got to keep doing it.
Yeah, double down, right? So
exactly.
Hey, let's staying on theme and on point. Many of the people attracted to this country, and many of the successes we've had here and around the world, people showing up, resilience, tenacity, all of those things you need to do to make a new life in a new country, showing up, in the same way maybe you would see an entrepreneur as an investor, or you as an entrepreneur yourself, took those challenges head on, no matter what. Investing in technology in this country, there's been a lot of fodder over the last couple of weeks about, are we doing it right? Are we not doing it right? Thinking specifically about folks who have done it once before and are doing it again, or investors who back, early stage or later stage entrepreneurs. How do you think Canada's doing, and ought we just continue on with how things were? And again, 1 being not an issue, 10, we've got to pay real attention to how we're viewed on the world stage as investors and entrepreneurs.
Well, 1 to 2 in that I think we're doing a really, really good job. 9 and 10 in fact, because we got to keep doing that. And over the next decade, I think it's actually the sector and the area that we can continue to swing way above our weight if we do it right. And, as we start the switch, which was what Biden was really talking about, which is what has pissed me off about his abrupt Keystone thing. He was talking about a transition, right? He wasn't talking about, shut the lights out, right? And change immediately to a new eco-friendly future. It can be done, and it can, and the change can be cleaned up along the way. So, and that can be aided by tech. So 9 to 10, because I think we're on a heck of a roll. I think we're doing a lot right, and we can dive into any one of those areas if we have time. You're driving this ship, but I think we got to keep doing what we're doing. And I put a 9 and 10 on it to pay attention, because at some point, as we know, the deficit and money that we're spending through this period, some responsibly, some you could debate, it's going to come home to roost at some point. And I know you feel this way. The place to not take it is off the people that continued to take risks through this entire period, because that's the fuel that leads to the small businesses, that leads to the small businesses becoming medium-sized businesses, that provides the biggest chunk of employment, and make sure that, we don't raise the next generation to have the belief that the best jobs in the country are government jobs. Important jobs, but they just shouldn't be the best jobs, right? Or the ones that everyone should aspire, every entrepreneur should aspire to. So we have to keep the engine going. And I'm hoping that as they look around on how to balance the books and get back to fiscal responsibility, that we don't have that same issue come back up on the table, which was really going to put the knife in all the momentum that you and I have just spoken about.
I'd be right on the 9 to 10. No question. There need to be incentives, focus, accommodation, recognition for those who are taking the risks and investing with very long-term horizons, high risk thresholds, and the challenges that come along with that. I'd throw in that, the unsaid mental health challenges that are there, which are amplified by the expectation, if you will, by the system at times that we're just going to keep doing it. And that, it isn't challenging despite what they throw at us. And we talked about the Tales from the Crypt guy. He gets run over and he gets back up. There's your entrepreneur for you. But, let's not count on that carte blanche. Same with investors. I mean, there needs to be a positive culture and environment, and we really need to pay attention. And I agree wholeheartedly. It's ours to lose from what this great country has built and the level of innovation we've shown time and time again. So, you can level the criticisms, and we think about getting better off that as Canadians, as opposed to being offended. So, yeah, I think well said the way you bookended that one.
Well, and just to pile on, I'm not a huge believer in trickle down economics. So don't take this the wrong way. As we see, more and more companies getting to a certain stage and exiting, the one thought people have, well, that money will trickle down into the mass sector of the economy. I don't actually believe that to be true, but what I do believe to be true is these are the kind of people that continually reinvest. They do it again, right? And they support others. And that's the trickle down version, not the classic definition of trickle down, but it's the reinvestment, because this is what these people are. It's in your DNA. You're not packing it up and going to Cayman, right? There's a few, but most of us, right, say that this country gave me this. We understand we got to be taxed. It's a great country. You need money to run it, and just give me a chance to keep reinvesting in our next generation of smart young engineers, of which we have the best in the world, and second and third generation business success now that are gaining the experience on how to be vice presidents and directors and start their own, and just let us have at it, because that's what's creating the momentum now. Please don't get in our way on that one.
Yeah, and encourage us, and despite the successes that we've had, there is a great culture in this country of collaboration between investors and entrepreneurs. We have seen second generation examples, whether it's your case starting round 13, which is an entrepreneurial endeavor. As much as it looks like you went from being an entrepreneur to an investor, it's what makes you a great investor, as we watch how you can assess an entrepreneur and where that fits into what your commitments are to your stakeholders. Who really understands how that works? And for the ones that do, stick together, and let's make sure the system is opening up those doors and encouraging us, rather than expecting that we're going to do certain things without really getting into what makes someone like you tick. And of course, it's been great to watch. So we had 30 minutes today. We could go on all day. I asked the last one. I'm wide open for one from you, and I got one quick one back at you after you throw one on me.
Sure. Well, I got we're heading into some interesting territory as progress bumps up against the planet, right? So I'd be interested in hearing what your thoughts would be on climate change, awareness of what to do about it. Is it, you think we're on track, we'll figure it out, one or two, or do you figure this is something that we should have high on the radar and putting much more of our available resources into fixing?
Yeah, I'm on the latter. I believe we really, really need to focus here. And I think there are equally significant opportunities for Canadian entrepreneurs. That's the part of the message that is coming from our government that I can resonate with on this issue, which is we will see innovation. We have to be realistic about what period of time it's going to take for us to transition and how to encourage those efforts. But I'm going to come at it a little bit differently and say I'm going to put it right up at a 10, because for some of the same challenges we have with how we consume media. You know, consumers are really not aware of what damage is being done right in front of their eyes and at their own hands, when probably they really don't mean to do that. You know, we've flooded the roads with delivery vehicles at a very low cost and high level of desire for us to be able to push a button and get stuff to land on our doorsteps. But by focusing a little bit more on block and tackle things, as we've seen during the pandemic, your point at the beginning of the 30 minutes around how we were forced very quickly and were resilient and adaptive. You know, we saw that with large retailers. All of a sudden you can push a button and pick something up. You're driving right by anyway. You know, in my presentation coming up after this, we'll talk a little bit about some of what we learned from Walmart and Shopify and others who are really going at this a different way. When Greta Thunberg is up talking about what we need to do for the planet, you know, an extra half a sentence to say, and by the way, do you really need to push that button and, you know, flare the carbon levels up in a major city to get a single-use delivery on your doorstep? And do you have to have your razors showing up there too? Or can they be bundled up and managed the way, you know, good high-power logistics companies have been doing forever? So I'd throw out there that, you know, some of the problems we have are really hidden behind consumer euphoria, and getting awareness up for what there are things happening, even if it's a cycle science, or even math told us we should expect. So I think we need to pay attention, and we need to do our part individually, just like in any democracy. You know,
are you optimistic though? Are you optimistic?
Yeah, I am optimistic, and I would say more optimistic now than prior to the pandemic, based on the adaptivity and the resilience that we saw. People are doing things more efficiently now because they had to, as opposed to saying, let me just push this button and put another 5 cars on the road. So I think we saw business opportunities emerge, and as you mentioned, in months we saw what would have taken years happen. So, you know, I believe capital markets are efficient. I believe entrepreneurs are creative. I believe investors are onto this, and I believe that wave has, you know, started, and that we'll see some real creativity and business opportunities turn into efficiencies that in turn will help the planet. And I believe those messages can get out, because at the same time, people are saying, you know, are we really being given the straight goods when we pop open our social media feed in the morning? What's true, what's not true? It's nice to hear President Biden say that yesterday, talk about how the truth matters and respect matters. And I think if we can see that together with the engine of any economy, and those two things can start firing together, we'll connect those two dots. We'll say, look, do we really need to do that? Or is there another way to get that same value proposition without the same cost to the economy? I mean, the carbon footprint in London went up like crazy, you know, since Uber dropped onto the city of London. Well, there's 100,000 cars circling around waiting to pick people up. You know, there are more efficient ways. We'll get to them. Markets are efficient. But hey, I think we're bumping up against it here. And like always, Bruce, when we get together, we could talk all day, and I wish we could today, but you know, here we are at 11:08. I turn it back to you for some closing comments, and thanks a lot for hopping on today. And it was good to see you, but please take it to the finish line here.
Well, just, I mean, you know, for the entrepreneurs on the line, maybe that it might be more targeted at you than everybody else, but you know, it's an old adage, right? When things go in cycles, and they call it a cycle for a reason. So my favorite piece of advice for anybody is, no matter where you feel you're at the cycle, just know that it's going to change. So if the COVID has, you know, allowed you to knock your business out of the park, don't hang on to that feeling too tightly, because you know it's going to change, and you're going to go through times again where you're going to find it challenging. But likewise, and for a lot of people during this period where it's like, oh my God, you know, I'm grinding and I can't do it anymore, hang in there, because if you keep doing the right thing with the right people around you, it too will come up the other end, just like everything else. So it's a roller coaster and it's a cycle, but I've seen enough of them now, Peter. You know, it's probably the only benefit of the gray hair is that I say it with confidence, because I've seen enough cycles to know that nothing stays still, right? So keep grinding.
True to form, Bruce Croxon, always inspiring everyone, including me, every time I hear you speak. And I couldn't agree more with that statement. As hard as it is to do sometimes, keep grinding and don't become complacent. I think that's what you just said. And I think we find that balance here, you know, in this great country, you know, we can have some confidence, and hopefully as we get through this next 2021 and get some of these pandemic issues under control, you know, we'll start to see some real innovation in this country. And I know that excites you and excites me too. So, hey, thanks for talking to me today. And I'm really looking forward to our next one. Enjoy.
Thanks, Peter. Very good.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Bruce and Peter. That was fantastic. So we will now, since Peter is on a roll of a fabulous conversation, we will now go to the